Before we start this video, go ahead and take a breath. A nice, deep breath. Feels pretty good, doesn't it? Let me guess, you're going to take another one. Wow, you're really addicted to that oxygen stuff, aren't you? Have you ever wondered why you're so dependent on it? And what happens to it once it reaches your lungs? Would you believe me if I told you it's nutrition related? Of course you would, that's why you're watching this channel. There is one nutrient in particular that's responsible for pretty much all things oxygen, and without it, well, let's just say you won't have to worry about breathing anymore. So before this intro gets any more morbid, let's dive back into the true nutrients. Yes, that's right, iron, the metal used to forge both swords and chains alike, is an essential nutrient. Though I would not suggest consuming those, as they might be a little tough to eat, and we'll get to better options later. But yeah, iron is critical to the function of your body, but the body cannot produce it on its own, thus it must be consumed. While iron consumption has been associated with the health of living things for hundreds of years, we didn't really understand why until 1932. Iron is among the most common nutrient deficiencies. It affects people of all ages, but most commonly children and menstruating or pregnant women. The average adult body has 3 to 4 grams of total iron in all forms. About 70% of the body's iron is in red blood cells, and roughly 25% of it is stored in the form of a protein called ferritin, mainly in the liver, spleen, bone marrow, and muscle tissue. Now, there's two types of iron you'll get from food, heme and non-heme. Heme iron is exclusively found in meat, so like red meat, poultry, and seafood due to animals needing iron for the same reason as us. Non-heme iron is found in both plant and animal foods. Heme iron is much more bioavailable, thus easier for your body to absorb. The absorption rate for heme iron is anywhere from 15 to 35% depending on a few factors, while non-heme iron is absorbed between a 2 to 20% rate, reaching those higher numbers under the right conditions. Iron is the first trace mineral we are covering in this series, meaning that we need far less of it when compared to certain other minerals, and it's uniquely the only trace mineral required to be on a standard food label. Now, unlike most other minerals that have a designated process to flush them out and rid of them, iron for the most part is recycled and conserved by the body. This is due to hepcidin, a hormone that maintains iron homeostasis, regulating iron absorption, recycling, and release. Significant amounts of iron are really only lost via blood loss, and let's just say that a certain half of the population deals with that on a regular basis much more than the other. But for now, let's take a look at what iron actually does. Iron's most important job is directly related to blood. It is a crucial building block of heme, which is used to make hemoglobin, a protein in your red blood cells that carries oxygen from your lungs to all the cells throughout your body, and the waste product carbon dioxide in the opposite manner. Oxygen is critical for the reproduction of cells and the synthesis of ATP, your body's main source of energy for pretty much everything. When iron is deficient, there's simply not enough hemoglobin to transfer oxygen, hindering the work of all the cells in the body. The same thing applies to myoglobin, a specialized protein that stores oxygen specifically in skeletal muscles and heart muscle cells. Iron is also a cofactor for many enzymes, including those involved in energy metabolism, respiration, and synthesis of collagen and neurotransmitters. But realistically, iron is the oxygen nutrient, and every single cell performing every single bodily function is dependent on oxygen, including the literal millions made every second, and they cannot get that oxygen without iron. So when that stored iron gets depleted, everything starts shutting down, so let's make sure you're consuming the right amounts to ensure that never happens. Now, I've already mentioned that iron is a nutrient that your body tends to recycle, but its daily consumption is still very highly advised. The standard recommended daily intake of iron is 8 milligrams a day for men, 18 milligrams a day for women who undergo a regular menstrual cycle, and 27 milligrams a day for women who are pregnant. It's higher for women to account for blood loss from menstruation, and even higher when pregnant to be able to supply oxygen to the baby. As I mentioned earlier, iron's absorption rate is roughly 15 to 35% for heme iron and much lower for non-heme iron, capping out at a 20% rate at the very most. While for women especially, hitting that iron goal can seem like a tough task, there are a few very accessible ways to aid it. Iron absorption improves when consumed with vitamin C, and citric acid is also shown to help, while vitamin A helps the body release stored iron. And non-heme iron from plants is better absorbed when eaten with heme iron from meat. On the other end, some anti-nutrients like phytate inhibit iron absorption, and even some generally positive nutrients like calcium and certain polyphenols have been shown to potentially have a negative impact as well. Now, iron deficiency is commonly referred to as sideropenia. An estimated 10% of men and 35% of women of reproductive age are deficient in iron. The most relevant actual issue involving iron deficiency is iron deficiency anemia. This is where the lack of the nutrient is significant enough to have a detrimental effect on the amount of hemoglobin and red blood cells. Now, anemia doesn't only occur due to insufficient iron. Not enough protein, folate, vitamin B12, or vitamin A can also contribute to it, and other potential conditions that are not necessarily nutrition related. An estimated 10% of women have iron deficiency anemia and less than 2% of men have it. Symptoms of iron deficiency anemia include most commonly noticeable fatigue, but also, when more extreme, rapid heart rate, paleness, irritability, difficulty thinking, trouble breathing, hair loss, impaired immune system, and as I keep not so subtly implying, death. If you have any concerns about this, talk to your doctor. They can take a blood test checking red blood cell count, or even take a test to measure ferritin levels and point you in the right direction from there. On the other end, too much iron consumption rarely occurs without abuse of supplementation. Fortunately, you shouldn't have to supplement iron because it is a nutrient that is fairly dense in a wide array of accessible foods. Let's cover meats first. All of these are going to contain heme iron, the more absorbable version. As with seemingly most micronutrients, the best animal sources of iron come from seafood. The absolute most dense being shellfish like cuttlefish, octopus, oysters, and mussels. Land meats are a pretty good source as well, with mammalian meats like venison, goat, and beef generally being more iron-dense than poultry meats. Special mention to organ meats for also being very iron-rich. When it comes to plant foods, numbers may appear inflated compared to the meats, but keep in mind that they are less bioavailable. As with many other micronutrients, seeds are generally the most iron-dense plant food per gram, but many plant foods can solidly contribute to your total. These include nuts, beans, lentils, soy, some grains, and some greens. As well as, again, real dark chocolate, which has no business being as nutritious as it is. Keep in mind that the absorption rate of plant-based iron can be noticeably improved with vitamin C and citric acid. Now, if you still find yourself struggling to consume enough iron or have consistent issues with anemia, iron supplements are available, though I do encourage you to make a genuine effort to try and get what you need from real food first. Alright, you addicts, that's all I've got for you today. Sadly, we live in a world where a lot of the times we have to get negligent or get burned to really learn a lesson. I would highly advise you do everything in your power to make getting this wrong not one of them, because oxygen is good and your body knows it. Now, if you enjoyed the video, or at the very least learned a little something, I encourage you to subscribe as I've got plenty more of these on the way. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments what other nutrients you think deserve an entire in-depth breakdown video like this, and remember that all I ask is that you do your own research and advocate for your body. You only get the one.